Hi, my name is Tomasz and you're watching Casual DIY channel. Today we'll be covering some basics about a circular saw. How it works, how to use it correctly and safely, and do you actually need it in your workshop. Check out the video. You may get a cordless version like I do, this high-koki battery powered, or a corded version like this Evolution circular saw. Most of these circular saws are very similar to each other in build and the options, the features they actually have. So let's start with some basics. The top guard of the blade is securely attached to the rest of the housing of the motor, so that is not movable, whereas at the bottom you've got a blade guard that actually retracts as you push the saw through your material when cutting. It's crucially important to always use that. It's a must-have safety feature on this type of tools. Later on, as you can see, you've got the dust extraction port. Not all circular saws have that. For example, this high-koki does not. You can buy an attachment for your shop vac, but in this case, the Evolution actually has got one. And when I use it, I usually hook up to my shop vac. The dust extraction will never be great on this type of tools, and they're not meant to be great. This is a workhorse that usually is used on job sites, but if used correctly, it will do some really good, decent job in a workshop for any DIYers or woodworkers. Over here, we've got the base of the saw, the foot plate that actually rides on your material that you are cutting, making sure that you are making stable and straight cuts. At the front of the foot plate, you've got some indicators here and two notches right over here. The first one indicates a straight cut with 0 degrees, i.e. 90 degrees to your work. And another notch just over here is for 45-degree cuts, so your bevels, anything like that. So that's your two indicators here. And to change the angle of the foot plate to the saw, it's very simple. In this case, you got the lever here, you got 45, 40, 30, and obviously 0 over here. So you got all the indicators telling you what angle you're actually on. As you release the lever, you can then change the angle of the foot plate, as you can see, to the desired degree. Usually you would use the 90 degree, i.e. 0, and then 45. That's the most common angles you'll be cutting during your work. From the side, as you can see, that's the motor is located over here, and you got two handles, one over here and one over here. It's very important to have a stable grip on the saw, as it does pack a lot of power, and you just need to be in the control of the tool. On the handle, in this case, I've got a safety button here and the trigger. To pull the trigger for the saw to actually start, I need to firstly press the safety button, and then I can press the trigger. It's a very good safety feature, preventing you from using the saw accidentally. Another important feature is, in this case, located at the back. You've got the lever here that, when unlocked, it will allow you to adjust the depth of cut of your saw. It's actually a very important feature that you should be using at all times. So the depth of your blade needs to be set up each time to the material thickness you're actually using. For example, if I want to cut this chipboard, the blade needs to be set up slightly over the thickness of your workpiece. Just like so. As you can see, that's the scale for depth of cut here, so it clearly indicates where you are and where you need to be according to the thickness of your workpiece. One more thing I want to mention is how to actually change the blade itself, as you will for sure come into that position, or where you buy the tool you will probably have to install the blade itself. In this case, there's a neat storage on this saw for an Allen key or a hex key, just like that. Thanks to this key we can unlock the nut, the flange that's locking the blade securely onto the saw. The motion needs to be anti-clockwise, but as you can see, as we do that, the blade actually spins and we need to stop the blade. For that, most of the saws will have a stop. Mine is located just over here. So I'm going to press that, spin the blade until it locks, and then I can undo the nut. Did you hear that? Now it's locked in place and the blade is not spinning. Anti-clockwise movement. Can take off the nut. The flange. And then remove the blade. Easy peasy. And then to secure it, fasten it, go clockwise. Alright, so that's some of the basics that you will find on most types of circular saws. Some of them may have additional features like a laser or something like that, but all in all, the whole build is very similar and the features will be more or less the same. But now it's the time to actually see what you can use this for, what jobs it can tackle, and how to do it safely. Right then, so before your first use, if you are an absolute novice here, potentially this is a fairly dangerous tool and you need to have a bit of respect for it. As the very least, please always use your eye protection glasses. I'm going to be using some hearing protection as well, as this machine is fairly loud. On top of it, with these types of saws, the dust extraction is not the greatest, so a mask would be a good idea as well. Right, and so what cuts you can actually make with this saw? Well, first of all, the crosscut is an absolute basic thing you can do with this tool, and you can do it in few ways. However, if you are a beginner, I would recommend that the workpiece you're going to be cutting, clamp it to your saw horses or anything you've got, so it won't move on you, and the only thing you're going to be focusing on is the machine, is the tool itself. Now I've got a stable board 2x4 ready to be cross-cut. Make sure that the base, the foot plate of your saw is stable on your workpiece and you're cutting it straight. First of all, you start the saw that it will get to full RPMs, and then you cut your board. Job done. To make your cut more accurate, you may use a speed square. You can place it against your workpiece, hold it in place, and that will give you a straight edge that the foot plate of your saw can ride on, making sure you got a nice and clean straight cut. If you're only beginning your adventure with DIY, I would highly recommend that you clamp the speed square so it doesn't move on you and you can fully focus on the saw. As you can see, the foot plate now references the straight edge. And now we've got a nice straight cut. And as you can see, it's a very fast way of making your crosscuts for whatever jobs you've got. One thing that I need to mention to you, it's a highly important thing and a safety thing. So as you can see, I've got my board over here between two saw horses. It's clamped to both of them. What you cannot do is actually make a cut right here in the middle as it is right now. What it will lead to, as you are cutting the board through and the blade is coming through both of the pieces, they will actually bond onto the blade, and that is highly dangerous it can lead to a serious kickback, as both of the pieces are not free to move away. So what you could actually do in this instance, if you do want to cut right here in the middle and still have the support of the sawhorses, it's to put a sacrificial piece underneath this one. So you set the depth cut of your saw so it actually just cuts through the first board and only slightly goes over, so the board can still rest on the sacrificial back that's there, and it will help and prevent the binding on the blade. Like this plywood, for example. Again, I'm using my sawhorses, but this time I've got two 2x4s underneath my workpiece, and that is to make sure I've got some sort of support for the board itself. As for example, if I would like to cut this piece out, this trim here that is not supported by the two boards underneath, it again may lead to binding on your blade, and for sure when you get to the end of your board, that will just break away due to the weight of the piece you're cutting. So the best practice is to have your sheet materials being supported at all times. Now I will be setting the depth of the blades. As mentioned before, I just want it to be slightly more than the thickness of the material. There are a few ways you can approach this scenario. If the board doesn't have to be super accurate, what you can do, you can trace a line on your workpiece. In my case, I'm using a level. And then, as mentioned before, on the foot plate, you've got an indicator. Where is your blade coming at? And you can virtually follow the line. That's the indicator there. I'm lining it up with the mark. I will start the motor and then make the cut. So as you've seen, it worked pretty well, although the cut will not be perfect. So if you are boarding your house and the cuts don't have to be super accurate, that's the way to go forward, as it is very quick. A different method, thanks to which you can get far better results and more accurate cuts, is to make a reference point for the shoe of the saw to ride against. For example, you can clamp a level to your workpiece and then the base of your saw will ride against it, making sure that you are doing a straight cut. You can also buy these panel clamps that work absolutely perfectly in this scenario, and that's what I'm going to use. Now we've got a straight edge that the saw can reference off. One thing that you need to make sure is to place the straight edge correctly, i.e. calculate the distance from your blade to the straight edge itself, to the end of the foot plate that you're referencing in, so you make an accurate cut with your blade. Always mark up which side is the waste side, as on the waste side the blade needs to be. Otherwise you'll end up with your workpiece shorter by the thickness of your blade. Most of the saws come with these metal edge guides as well, which attach to the saw itself, just like so. Got a securing knob over here, and that gives you the ability to place that against the edge of the board, of the sheet material you use, to make, well, fairly narrower pieces. It doesn't give you too much scope, and to be fair, I never use it. As I mentioned, the blade guard is an essential safety feature of all the circular saws, and at 100% all the times you should be using it and not forcing it to open or using the saw without it. However, there are instances where the blade guard would get in the way of your cut, so what you can do is exactly this. So for example, in this instance, I've got a 45-degree angle I want to cut on my piece. Now, in some cases, for example in this one, the guard itself may not retract correctly and causing you to stray from the line or the cut you are making. So what you could do in this instance, you'll start the machine on, take the blade guard up, make a slight cut about 1 centimeter in, and then release the blade guard. In that case, you will remain on your path of cut and you're still going to be safe to finish the cut itself. Although you make sure to pay attention of what you're doing to be safe. One thing I forgot to mention that may be an interest to you is that the blade itself, it spins upwards. It goes this way. Usually the blade itself will have arrows indicating which way it's spinning. So that's one thing to remember when you're installing a new blade. You may also want to subscribe to my channel, as I will be bringing a whole series of videos on the tools, how to use them, how to operate them for all those beginners, DIYers and woodworkers. So you will be covered right here. And to be sure you don't miss any of my videos, as you subscribe, press that bell notification icon and change it to all so you don't miss anything. If you're in the market for a tool like this, go to this description of this video, as I've got some Amazon links, affiliated links down there with some solid circular saws there, catered for all budgets. So pop in down there and have a look. Thank you for the support if you decide to buy something off my links. That's it from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Take care.